to order. I wasn't in the tap. It's too early. Tom.
Absolutely. The first order of business on the agenda is the vote on the corporate officers. This is a annual endeavor, so no changes in the position. Jessica, the corporate secretary, Beth, the treasurer, Doug, vice president, myself as president. This is required by state statute, and so we do this annually. Questions? Very straightforward. The next item on the agenda is replacement of a work truck for the water department. This is kind of similar to what occurred 6 some months ago. We had a vehicle in an accident. Fortunately, the employee is okay, but it's a critical vehicle. Fortunately, it was a 10-year-old vehicle, so you know if you're going to get in an accident, at least it's an older one. Trying to find a ray of sunshine in the situation, struggling but trying. And now we would not make any move forward on the purchase of a replacement vehicle because the insurance company has not yet deemed it a total loss, but it is. We used the Kelley Blue Book, which turned out to be conservative 6 months ago. So we wouldn't expend any funds until the insurance company makes a final ruling, but we at least want to get the ball rolling, and all these funds would come out of the water department.
Is it causing problems now not having a vehicle?
Yes. Unfortunately, yes. Hence why we want to move forward as reasonably quickly as possible. The next one is the licensing agreements with the city of Bella Vista. These are for the trails. So when the licensing agreements were originally created, the first one went into effect in November of 2015. And since then, we've had 7 amendments. So you have Little Sugar has been added, and then you have all these little trails here, there, and everywhere. So we have 7 amendments, and all these agreements were put into place before the work was actually done. And so what ended up happening in some cases were the agreement was for this parcel, but because once they got boots on the ground, they found that the trail had to go this way instead of that way, and then it went on to another parcel. So the city went through and they did a comprehensive analysis of where are all the trails and what are all the parcels that are covered by the licensing agreements and the 7 amendments. And we found some gaps. So it's clearly in our best interest for 2 reasons. First of all, is for maintenance situations. We don't want to be in a situation, I don't think this would ever happen, we don't want to be in a situation where we have a trail that needs work and the trail is not covered by the agreement, so then the responsibility of maintaining that trail falls solely on the POA and not the city. Not that the city would do that, but just you always want to make sure you're protected. The second reason is the recreational use statute. These trails are parks, and so if someone is injured using the trail, which happens, mountain biking is a hazardous activity, we are covered by the recreational use statute, but God forbid someone gets injured and it's not one of the trails that is part of the city, then a park, and part of the recreational use statute. So this just, and I think the third reason, I'm gonna add this at the end, is just cleaning it up. We have 8 agreements, let's just narrow it down. Now it's possible that the board may approve additional trails down the road and we'll have amendments to add it to this one, but at least let's put a stake in the ground and say, let's get this all set. Also, the end dates on these now 8 agreements are all over the place. And so we're proposing that we uniform that out and just make it a 25-year agreement. That was what it was originally. And that way we have start dates and end dates that match for all, 100+ miles. So it makes it a lot easier. We'd hate to be in a situation where, 15, 20 years from now, well, that trail is covered by the POA in the city, but that trail is not because it expired. We don't want to go down that road. None of us will be here at that time, but we still don't want to have to deal with that. Maybe David will be.
So it resets everything to zero and we start
It just
fresh.
starts everything clean.
So you're gonna have one new start date,
Yes,
so,
that's what we're proposing.
so it'll be 25 years from the date that it's signed.
Correct.
So
That's what we're-
basically, it's an extension on some of them.
Yes. Okay. Okay, we had a capital project that was approved in June, July, about 8-9 months ago. May, for the kitchen at Highlands. We originally felt it was gonna be a capital project. I think I could have had a better, more in-depth conversation with Beth, our CPA, and she came back and said, look, that's really an expense item. We need to have an expense item, and we don't want the auditors to catch that because Beth is, since she's been here, has been shooting 1,000% on not having any adjustments from the auditors. So we need to convert this into an expense item. It really needs to. Also, so there's no provision in our governing documents about this, but for full transparency, it makes sense to let's just take a vote and just say, look, this is no longer a capital item. It will impact the P&L, the 2024 P&L. Also, full disclosure, the project did end up going over budget. The damage to the pipes caused by the grease, because we had decades of outside organizations running the restaurant before we took over. The damage was much more extensive than originally thought, so that made the cost of it go up. Also, the contractor hit the power line inside the building, which that was a mess, and we're still working to get the money out of the contractor, and we're not certain when that's gonna happen. And it may involve Doug to get that money out of him. Fun. So, but we're just asking you to convert this from a capital item to a capital project to an expense. Okay, so yesterday, this is not on the agenda, I do apologize. Yesterday at the Rules and Regulations Committee, we went over 3 proposed changes to policies. And if this turns out to be that we're going too quickly on this one, and the board has not had enough time to contemplate this, we can always defer this to next month. There is no there's no emergency on any of this. So feel free to just say, look, this is too much information, let's delay. The first one is to policy 1.01. And what this is doing is trying to really make it clear how our membership can get information. So one of the primary ways is people will send an email to info, and we get a lot, and they all come into the marketing department, and then they meter it out to the respective department that they need information. They're also very well versed, and so they answer a lot of the questions also, and in some cases, they have like a list of emails that they can go, okay, we've answered this one before. They just cut and paste, and it makes it really easy. The next one is the board. When someone sends an email, it goes to the board, and it goes to all of you, as opposed to having them to go in and send one to Jason and and so forth. That makes it more challenging. And then the last one is to CEO. That routes to my email. But one of the things that we add at the bottom, I'm sorry, the next one is the board and management team will endeavor to respond to emails from members in a timely manner. I think we do thank you so much. I think we do an outstanding job of responding to members' questions in a timely manner. Weekends are a different thing, but I think we do a pretty good job. The next one was really kind of the impetus, the last paragraph here was the impetus for this, and emails that are deemed to be abusive or that include profanity will be ignored, with the sender's email address potentially blocked in extreme situations. Excessive emails from an individual member as determined by the board will be ignored with no advance notice given to the member. If a member does not receive a response to an email in a timely manner, the member is encouraged to attend the next board meeting to ask their questions or have their concerns addressed. So I think first of all is, abusive is clearly, it happens. It happens. It doesn't happen that often, but it does happen. And this gives us an avenue to address that. The excessive emails, we've experienced that, the board has experienced that, and we're going to allow the board to determine what excessive is, because if you try and enumerate that, in some cases, we've received emails from members that are legitimate. I get a lot of emails from Deb Sorensen, who's our volunteer in charge of our meet and greets. I get tons of emails from her, but those are not abusive in any way. We're just working through. But we do have an occasional member here or there that will overload the board, and this will clearly enumerate that the board can ignore those without any advance notice given. I think it is polite to let the member know, but in some cases when they're doing it's extreme. I think the biggest thing is at the bottom where they do have an avenue. They can come to a board meeting, they can make their comments, they can state them. So even if they've gotten excessive and the board has cut them off, they still have the ability to come into the board and address their concerns. Questions, comments?
I think, not having time to have thought through this yet, but I think they do deserve advance notice. That's just the first thing that comes to my mind. There are members, and I think we owe them that respect regardless.
I don't disagree with that.
If we made a modification to that, would you be acceptable? Would this be acceptable?
I got the same concern. You get an email and then, all of a sudden it looks like you're gonna have a bunch of, time-consuming follow-up emails. You just say, no, board has decided, that your question has been answered. If you have concerns, come to the meeting. That's the end of the conversation as far as emails are concerned, but it just, notifies them that,
Okay.
yes, you hit your limit.
No problem in adding that.
I don't have a problem.
We'll make those modifications, and the board can consider it next week. Yes, no?
I mean, there are all sorts of ways around these things. People have friends, they can have their friends send an email.
Agreed. We're just
And
trying-
I just hope that we do a good job of providing as much information as we can. I think sometimes the emails we receive require a very simple answer. Or they could have been prevented with maybe a note, on an accounting form, why something's been changed. I mean, I don't fault members when they have questions about something, but I understand what you're saying about, you know, wanting too much detail sometimes. So
I think this is
Or arguing.
the 99%. I think we literally receive thousands, tens of thousands of emails every year, and we respond to them in a timely manner. We are very cooperative and informative. This is trying to address the 1% that is extreme.
And then again, it is a situation where, you know, the board feels that enough is enough. And that's what it says, you know, when the board says enough is enough, then it's enough. So,
Well, I think what we're talking about, sometimes it becomes obvious that the email subject has intentions that are not necessarily admirable. They're intended to cause problems and conflict, and I think that's what we're having a conversation about. It's not just somebody has a legitimate question. We want to try to help everybody get the information that they need.
now, you assume positive intent until it becomes obvious that it's not positive intent.
I don't remember if Tom mentioned this or not, but these proposed policy changes were presented to the Rules and Regs Committee yesterday, and they were debated and talked about, some changes made, and voted to come forward to the board today, so just for that point.
So we have a work session, we're working on it.
Yeah, you're working on it. Okay, 2 more to go.
Anything else on that?
Yeah. Okay, this was a challenging one. So this is on political signs and use of facility. Fun subject. So some of this was born out of the most recent national, state, and local election. The first thing is stating clearly that the POA is neutral and they don't endorse political candidates. I don't think every election I have someone running for city council or the mayor or something like that, and they go, "Hey, I'd like your endorsement, Tom," and I'm like, "That's not. I need to stay neutral." So I think this clearly states, "Hey, we need to stay neutral." I mean, you know, maybe someone would come to Jason and Jason, you know, "Jason, will you endorse me for whatever?" You know, I don't think, in my opinion, that's not a stance that Jason as the chair should take. So clearly stating we're neutral. The next one is any POA member, any member may rent an association facility for purposes of holding a political event. Keyword there is rent. The association is prohibited from donating the use of the facilities for political purposes. Such events must be paid in full in advance. So just about every election time, I'll get a call from someone and say, "Hey, we want to have this candidate, and we want, you know, of course the POA is going to host it and provide the facility for free." And we're like, no, we're neutral. We stay out of that. You can rent it. "Oh, no, I don't want to rent it." You know, and I'm like, no. Then we don't want to be in a situation where we look like we endorse it. Now, JB during yesterday's meeting did point out the League of Women Voters did have a forum for all the candidates. So that's clearly, everybody's invited, nobody's excluded.
That's neutral.
That's neutral, that's different. But we just, some members assume that the POA should take one side or the other, and this clearly says, nope, we stay in the middle. Okay, political signs. So about 8 years ago, Doug and we received complaints. Any complaints we usually receive are usually from the opposing candidate. So you always have to keep that in mind. We received complaints on signs on common property, and they asked us to remove signs. So Doug and I went out there with GPS, and we found that it was near impossible without a survey, and a survey would cost you $500-600 and take a month to get done. Without a survey, we couldn't determine where some of these signs, whether they were on common property or not. I distinctly remember one where it was like the road, ditch, side of a hill, and the sign was placed on the side of that hill, and we're standing there going, it might be our property, it might be private property, we don't know. So we didn't touch the sign because we wanted to err on the side of caution and not remove a sign that was on private property. So with that being said, this last election, I personally saw more political signs than I've ever seen before. And so then we were receiving calls. I was personally getting emails and calls daily from members saying, they're ugly, why are they up? Why is the POA allowing this? It's not common property, get rid of them. So I ended up having a conversation with Neth Bazor, who's been, part of the ACC for decades. And he recommended, why don't you limit it to one location of common property. Say, look, if you guys want to have a sign, we're going to have it at this location. And the location we selected was just north of Allen's. It's on the golf course, it's on the Highway 71. So it's a good spot. So it's not like we're the one location we're picking is behind the dumpster. It's on the main highway that goes through Bella Vista, so it's very visible. And say, look, if you want to put it there, if you want a sign, just put it there. But if it's anywhere else, we're going to remove it. Now, this doesn't 100% remove the challenge that is it in the road right of way, is it on private property, but GPS has improved a little bit since Doug and I went out there 8 years ago. I now have it on my phone where I can go and look. It's still not going to be easy. But if we take the proactive approach of contacting the candidates and saying, hey, we encourage you to place your signs here and please don't put them on common property anywhere else, we might get a little control over the situation.
Is that the east side or the west side of the highway?
East.
East side. I don't know. We don't own the west side. Well,
Okay, question then.
Nobody likes to
On
put
the
on
west
the
side, there's a lot of signs placed up there at Cunningham Corner.
Yeah, but that's not.
that is Cooper.
Yeah.
Got nothing to do with it.
That's what I
Anyway.
wanted, that's what I wanted to bring up, because I was contacted after the meeting yesterday, and somebody said, oh, so we can't put our signs up anymore, and I'm like, no, that's not what we said. And we went over like it's 171, but remember, we're not the only ones. You still have Blue Creek to get permission from, you still have Cooper to get permission from, and you should get permission. In the past, most candidates got permission before they put up signs. This year, I don't think they realized they were supposed to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I got from about half the candidates, I got a call asking where they can place signs. So most of them are respectful and polite. So we're just trying to get some control over it. The other thing is, in item number 5, we're trying to hedge our bet here, because if we remove a sign and it gets replaced the next day, we want to be able to say, look, we're not going to be out there every single moment and remove it immediately, because there's 500 miles of roads in Bella Vista. So, the way I phrased this to the Rules and Regulations Committee yesterday was, it's kind of a soft recommendation. I'm not like 100%, it's a little bit of a quagmire, but we're trying to add a semblance of reason to a challenging situation.
So the state and the city do not allow any signs on right of way?
They're everywhere.
With permissions, you can do a lot of things.
On the right of way?
on the right of way, I don't know about that, but I'm just saying that with
Yeah.
permissions, even the city, what the city used to do, when they remove signs, is put them behind a dumpster and said you have 7 days to pick these up. So they've had problems with it too, but the right of way of the state, that's all, I don't know.
I don't know the state.
Yeah, I mean, that, you're getting into a situation, Highway 340.
Mhm.
I don't know how wide the right of way is, but I know that it abuts sometimes common property and sometimes private property. So if you go around and somebody plants one maybe in your yard,
Mhm.
maybe a little closer to the highway to make it visible, is,
What they did before, in the past, is if you put it in the right of way, the mowers come along and they mow the right of way, and they'll mow your sign right in half.
but the signs are not only allowed X number of days, and by that time, the November election cycle, they're done mowing.
I know,
I
but I'm
hope.
just saying that I've had signs mowed before.
It's just, you know, like you say, it's a quagmire, it's Pandora's box, it's just like,
I don't disagree one bit.
I don't think anything we're doing today is gonna affect that
No.
necessarily, but it does from a POA perspective.
Protects us.
We can say, this is our rules, so all the rest of that, hey, go to the city, go to the state, that's not our problem, but here's what the POA does. Let's define that, it's clear, we can move on.
and Tom will never get any more phone calls.
Oh my God. So what do you guys think?
Can I get some clarification on the comment about the League of Women Voters? Were we saying that they would be an exception and they would not have to pay the rent? I didn't understand that
It's a
statement.
one-off thing, really.
But would they pay the
maybe-
rent or would they not?
I don't know.
Well, maybe.
Well, I
maybe-
think we
It
have
was
to
neutral.
understand
Maybe we
that.
have to.
I had that same, I
You
voted no
cannot-
on the number
You
two.
can't say they're neutral if you don't know what's going on behind the scenes, I'm sorry.
Is it individual or is it individual and group? It's kind of where I was going.
It just, for any reason, it has to be rented.
And I think they would have rented it. It was a very short term notice, and the decision was made. I believe they would have rented it, had there been, they just kind of got started here. Benton County wasn't even.
It
we
needs
could go
to be
two
rented,
ways.
you can't pick and choose.
We could say, everybody pays rent, no matter, even if they are including every candidate, or, how it's currently written would work. Or you could go the other way and is, you know, if a group hosts a meeting with all candidates, but we could
It
get.
works the way it is for what she's saying.
So next time if the League of Women Voters comes up, then we're gonna say you have to.
Any or all.
All right, I'm fine with that.
Get to kick us to Deborah's point, you could have a forum that's for all candidates, but if that forum, they can be structured possibly to favor one candidate
Yep.
over another,
Yep.
and you're getting into the weeds a little
Okay,
bit, so.
yeah, I agree.
Scroll back up to the language.
That probably needs,
Oh, I think I
any
gotta go
member,
higher.
or, what'd you say? Any member or organization may rent the association facility?
Or organization.
Yeah.
But do we want an outside organization? If it's a member, it's sponsored by that member.
Okay.
Do we want an organization that has nothing to do with the POA coming to us?
Do we rent
Get a
to
higher
other
fee
public
rate?
entities?
Hmm?
Do we rent to other public entities?
Yeah, weddings,
Yeah,
yeah, we do.
and you can have a higher fee, higher rate for non-members.
Okay,
Yeah.
or organization. Okay, we'll make that change.
You know, this is kind of interesting because the membership can see what goes on in our general closed sessions, and this is how this works.
Right.
When we get to here, it's like, yep, we're good, go.
Yep.
This is how it works.
All right, last one. Okay, use of common property. This is really a septic issue we're talking about. The changes are in red and in blue. One is Doug and one is me, and I can't remember which. So 5-6 years ago, the board completely revamped this policy and created a checklist which is really very clear. And so what we're trying to say is, let's see if we can streamline this, because by the time they get to us, they've been dealing with the failed septic system for months. And they're members, they're our neighbors, and they've been dealing with this for months. I think the one that we dealt with in December, they actually had to move out for a while because the system had failed so badly. So they're struggling, so what we're proposing is that in red, due to the emergency nature of requests related to the failure of septic systems, the board delegates permission granting authority to management in those circumstances, subject to the guidelines provided in this policy. So what we're saying is, as long as management follows the policy to a T, then we can make that decision on behalf of the board, which then eliminates the requirement to have them go to a meeting, which further delays their challenge. And in the blue towards the bottom, management may only grant permission for the use of common property for a septic system when the request fully complies with this policy. So we're not asking permission to go way out of bounds. We're just saying, look, if it follows this policy, then we're going to go with it. Management must inform the board at the next regular board meeting of any requests that have been granted. Requests for the use of common property for a septic system which are rejected by management may be appealed to the board. Now, Jeff brought up an interesting example yesterday as to what do we do with a situation where the request is extreme. And so Doug and I relayed an example that we actually rejected before it even got to the board. And so what this one was here's a property with the system failed and they wanted to traverse common property, and the first proposal was to go 4 lots down, and it was a very narrow strip of common property, and they wanted to go 4 lots down, and we're like, no, we don't agree with that at all. That's going to lead to future problems. So we pushed back and said, you need to get a closer lot. So they, instead of going 4 down, they went 1 over, and they were able to accomplish it. And that's what was brought to the board, and that's what the board approved. So Jeff's concern was that we might approve something that was extreme, and I was use that as an example of, no, we actually pushed back on this one before the board even saw it. And the builder was just trying to, the person was trying to, the lot 4 down was much cheaper than the lot across the way, and so they were trying to save money, which is reasonable, but it was extreme request. So we're just trying to set up a situation where we can facilitate this quicker to help out the member. But we do there is a check and balance. We have to come back and we have to report to the board. So we can't approve it in, in a cloak of secrecy. We have to come to you and say, this is what we did. This is another point that Jeff made is, but it's already been approved, so there's nothing, if the board disagrees, there's nothing that the board can do about it. But then we talked about the example I just gave you, and I think that placated your concern.
I mean, I think we have a good process for getting these things in line. So I guess I'm not terribly concerned about it. I would prefer, if possible, that an email be sent to the board with copies of the information.
So we let
And
you know
that
as
could
soon
be
as possible.
done, yeah, I don't think we need to wait till the next board meeting.
Good idea.
Yeah, I agree
Sandy,
with
I
that.
think that's a great idea,
Yep,
because then if anybody has a problem, it can be addressed right then and brought to Tom's attention and then otherwise, if you don't get that kickback, you know, good, we wanna do it, let's
Fair
roll.
enough.
And then we don't have to wait on the board meeting, still accomplishes your goal, but keeps everybody in the loop.
I like it.
So, yeah.
It quickens the pace, helps out the member who's in a tough, I can use a
spot.
different word. But also improves the checks and balances.
Yes.
well, and this isn't a common occurrence either, I mean, we
3
get
or
them
4
every once
times
in
a
a
year.
while, but we also know, as we've talked over the years, that
It's
it's gonna get a little bit more, yeah. But good call out, Sandy, for sure.
We'll make those changes to all 3 of the policies. We'll bring it to the attention of the board. And once again, even next week, if you still have concerns, we can always kick it to the next month.
And each one stands on its own, you could pass one and not pass the other.
Absolutely, absolutely. Clear, you know, you look at the election one, we got a little time on that one. You know, so the next election's not for 2 years, so we're not pressed for time.
Sometimes there's a primary election in the spring.
Does that include board
You
elections?
had to mention that.
I'm sorry.
Does
there
that
is.
include
That's
board
where I
elections?
got my signs mowed down.
Is that local?
That one is really referring to local, state, national.
Gotcha.
We could have board members putting signs up.
That's what I was just asked, does that include board elections?
It probably has to follow all of them.
Technically not on common property, they're not supposed to.
Yeah.
They're not supposed to put signs on common property.
So
Or- or
that'd be considered
campaign-
local.
Or campaign on, yes,
Right.
but I would loop that in with a local election.
Clarification.
And you know, what I believe people that are running for office have discovered is signs are not really the indicator of helping you get elected as much as shaking your hand and putting the door knockers on the door and meeting the people. It's kind of changed.
Yeah.
Unless somebody just drives down the road and they see the name, like, oh, I like that name, I think I'll vote for it.
That's all signs are, is name recognition for uninformed voters that walk in and go, I've seen, for whatever, that pops in my head and
Yeah.
go in. Same reason I
Or I
have
like the
signage
way
on the
this
vehicle.
person's name sounds on
democracy.
paper.
I would agree with that. All the candidates that I spoke to all agreed to that same point, and we still had an
Signs.
explosion of signs this last year, so,
If you don't do it, you're
yeah, if you
noted
don't
by
do it,
lacking
yeah.
absence.
Anything else on policies? And we're good to go ahead and put them on the agenda for the
Next
regular
week.
session. Okay, cool.
And I also
Thanks, Jimmy.
mentioned, while I apologize it was not on today's agenda, keep in mind the entire approval process has got to go through the rules and regulations, which it did. Would have to go to this month's regular session, and then next month it's got to be discussed again at the work session and the regular, so it requires 2 months, 2 votes to get fully approved. So while I apologize it wasn't on the agenda, it's not like we're trying to sneak it in there because there's a lot more meetings ahead of us.
And you're not responsible for the snow.
Well, this one was my fault.
Okay.
This one was my fault.
I would know who to blame.
Are you done?
I am done.
You completed, sir?
I am done.
All right, next on the agenda is open forum. Did we have somebody that wanted to speak? As with policy, there's gonna be a 3-minute timer. You got 3 minutes to get through it.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm Mary Lee Poole. I live on Kingsland Lane, and I'm a frequent user of the dog parks and our rec center and lots of our other amenities. And we've had another, I just am here today to lend my support to the idea of placing cameras in some of our POA parking areas. The sheet that I've just handed you is the breaking and entering report from the police department for last year. And you will notice in that I've highlighted some in purple and green. The purple are amenity parking spots, like at the rec center and the dog park. The green are trailhead parking, or areas where people frequently park to use the trails. And so I just wanted to bring that point up, that these are areas that seem to get hit periodically. The police department tells me it's a cycle, that a lot of times it's during certain periods of the year. And I noticed on that mainly, it's like September through March is when we see these incidents. But out of the 41 incidents last year, 10 to 12 were in POA parking lots, and that's 24 to 29% of the break-ins. On the west side of town, there were 6 or 7 incidents. There's one that's reported at the police department. I'm not sure if that happened at the police department or it was just reported at the police department, so I kind of left that one out. And then on the east side, there were 5 instances. There's more trailhead parking over there. So what can we do about it? Well, one thing, maybe put some signs up in our parking lots, just warning this area is under surveillance. It doesn't have to be a camera there for you to say it's under surveillance, because those of us that frequent the dog park are starting to get together in a neighborhood watch form manner to keep a closer eye on the parking. But we could put up cameras, and that would help with not only prevention, but it would help the police department with their prosecution if they are able to apprehend those people. And of course, the people that use these amenities in these parks should increase their wariness and vigilance of what's going on. I mean, we all know you leave something in plain view, it's more likely to happen. But at the same time, we hate for this kind of thing to be happening in Bella Vista. And so if park users pay closer attention to what's in view in their vehicles, as well as keeping a better eye on their vehicles while they're in that area. And of course, then if they spot something happening, we all have our cell phones now, so maybe they could record the tag numbers or the people's faces or whatever. Not conflict, not get into an altercation with somebody at all. That would be foolish. But perhaps they could help with that. And so that's all I wanted to do, was lend my support to the idea of placing some cameras in those areas where we have had quite a few instances to occur. And may I speak to something else that I just heard about the, 10 seconds. I've got a lot next to me that is too narrow to put a septic tank on, and if they run a septic, it's gonna have to go down in a beautiful ravine with lots of ferns and beautiful plants, and I would hate to see that happen. Thank you.
You got it in. Thanks, Mary.
Thank you, that was a good presentation and well thought out.
The second one, I assume where you're talking about in the valley and the ferns and everything is on common property?
Yes.
Okay, so for a failed system, on an existing home, a failed system, you can traverse POA property, meaning taking a pipe and going from one lot to another. You can traverse. And for a failed system, you can also, with permission, put a septic system on common property. That's for failed. For a new system, for a new home, you can only traverse. You cannot have a septic system on common property. That is against the policy. So when you talked about a small lot that would require a septic system for a new build, that would not be allowed. Okay?
I love the way you explain things. When I come to the meetings and listen to what's happening, and when I speak to you in person and get the explanation behind the whole picture, you would never get an email from me that would kind of. So y'all hang in there. We appreciate what you do and how we are doing.
I also want to let you know that we did have a conversation about the board discussed the camera security issue yesterday. We're actually speaking with 3 different vendors. We are looking at different locations. The challenge here, and I'm sure you can fit, is, my God, look at all the different places. And that's, the cameras are not cheap, and that's a lot of different places. And so, you know, that's gonna have to, you know, we're looking at infrastructure, but we're also looking at amenities. And so the board is listening and is working the problem, and staff is working the problem right now, and trying to find you know, we want to make sure if we go with cameras, we want to make sure we have good cameras. We don't want to have well, it looks like a person maybe, but we can't identify. That's not going to give the police any help. We got to make sure. And so the ones that have, you know, more clarity and you can see more, also cost a lot more. So it's not deer cameras that we're putting up that are cheap, you know. So there is the cost factor, and also, so I don't want to give you any false hope that this is going to be a quick and easy fix, but we are listening.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mary.
If I could comment, I
Sure.
do believe, Tom, last year you did put some cameras in higher volume areas, or am I mistaken?
We've just turned it off. We've added some deer cameras. We were looking at, the original plan was to add cameras at Tanyard Creek Nature Trail. And then we decided to hold off on that because we're considering expanding that parking lot. We haven't made a decision on that. And so that camera hasn't been, those cameras have not been installed. We have added some additional cameras here at the country club. Of course, the most recent break-in was on level 3, and we don't have a camera up there.
Gotcha.
And the police are doing a good job. They're doing everything they can.
Right.
But this is, you know, 36,000 acres, and that's just POA land. So it's a, you know, that's what's challenging here is when I go down the list. It's like Branchwood, you know, Loch Lomond, Tanyard, Water Department. It's you know, that's a lot of cameras.
In some instances, though, a good alternative is the signs that say this is under surveillance.
You know, and you know, you see those signs. You know, hide your valuables signs. I don't think that's a bad idea to have those kind of signs out there. And you know, I remember Alice and I were on vacation. We parked and there was a big sign, hide your valuables and everything. And we did. You know, we did. And it's probably that. I think that might be a easy stopgap.
Just a reminder.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I forgot to hide my purse.
Would you add smile, you're on camera?
I was just gonna say, smile, you're on
Yeah.
Does anybody know what candid camera is anymore?
I think this group does. All except for Doug, he's too young.
Doug's too young.
Jessica over there going, I have no idea what you're talking. I have no idea what you're talking about.
All right. You're just here to observe, right? Okay, good deal. Anything else before we go into a few announcements? And I will hopefully say the right month this time, Jeff.
Yep.
No? All right, the announcements. The second board candidate informational meeting is I almost did it again. January 21st at 4 here in the boardroom. The regular session, Board of Directors regular session is January 23rd at 6 p.m. here in the boardroom and live stream. The third board candidate informational meeting is Tuesday, February 4th at 4 o'clock here in the boardroom. Rules and regs. Next meeting is February 13th at 1:30 here at the boardroom and live stream.
We
Actually,
canceled that one and put it to March.
okay, so that meeting's not happening. Board of Directors General Meeting, which is a closed meeting, is February 13th at 2:30 here in the boardroom. Recreation JAC, it's time for all of them to get back up and running. Recreation JAC is February 10th at 4, boardroom live stream. All these are boardroom and live stream, by the way. Lakes JAC is February 12th at 2. Golf JAC is February 12th at 4. Important date, the board candidate application packets are due February 17th via email to the corporate secretary, or you can bring them here to the country club. Our next work session is February 20th at 9, and our regular session is February 27th at 6. That's it.
Just a reminder, is it Monday? Monday is MLK Day, and it's an administrative holiday for some of the staff.
Okay, thank you.
So that means that member resources will be closed. But the golf courses, the restaurants, they'll all be open, but like member resources will be closed.
True that, true that. Have the potential of being open.
Check the weather hotline, and check the frost line on that.
Exactly. All right, thanks, everybody. Meeting adjourned.